welcome back to my channel. We're continuing our journey through the greatest myths and epics of the world. Today's story is one of courage, sacrifice, and destiny, a tale whispered through the cold mists of Northern Europe. The title of today's legend is Beowulf, the Dragon's Bane, in the shadowed lands of ancient Scandinavia, where icy winds howled across dark fjords, and mead halls gleamed with firelight. There rose a hero whose name would echo through eternity, Beowulf. Born of noble blood and forged in battle, he was destined to face monsters, born of night and vengeance. This is the story of his rise, his triumphs, and the final battle that would seal his legacy for all time. Chapter 1. The arrival of the hero in the cold, mist-shrouded land of the Danes. A shadow had fallen upon the great hall of King Hrothgar. Hero, the magnificent mead hall, once a place of laughter and song, now echoed with the cries of terror. For years, a monstrous creature known as Grendel, a descendant of Cain, had prowled the night, devouring warriors and striking fear into every heart. No man dared face the fiend, and despair had taken root in the land. Across the sea, in the distant land of the Geats, a warrior named Beowulf heard the call of destiny. His fame as a fearless fighter had spread far and wide, his strength unmatched by any mortal man. Upon hearing of Hrothgar's plight, Beowulf gathered his bravest companions and set sail across the turbulent waters, guided by courage and a sense of honor that burned brighter than any fire. As the Geats' long ship cut through the waves, the sea spray glistened in the morning light, and the sound of oars striking the water echoed like drums of war. Beowulf's mind was focused, his thoughts on the challenge ahead. He had faced monsters before, yet the tales of Grendel's wrath and strength left him cautious. Still, he knew that true heroism required action, not fear. Upon reaching the Danish shore, Beowulf and his warriors were greeted by Hrothgar's men. The great hall of Hero rose before them, its timbers scarred by the attacks of Grendel. Yet there was a fire within its walls, a spark of hope that had not yet been extinguished. The king himself, aged but still regal, welcomed Beowulf with warmth and reverence. "Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow," Hrothgar said, his voice steady but tinged with sorrow. "Your courage precedes you. I have long awaited a hero who might rid our hall of this terror. If you succeed, your name shall be sung in our lands for generations. If you fail, then all hope will be lost." Beowulf bowed deeply. "Great king, I do not seek glory for its own sake. I seek to protect the innocent, to honor the valor of those who came before me, and to face the darkness with steadfast heart. Grendel will find no quarter here, for I will confront him without fear, with my hands alone if necessary." That night, the Hall of Hero was alive with song and celebration, yet a tension lingered beneath the mirth. Shadows danced upon the walls as warriors kept watch, their eyes scanning the darkness beyond. Beowulf, confident but vigilant, prepared himself for the confrontation to come. He knew that the battle with Grendel would be unlike any other he had faced. Cunning, strength, and pure ferocity awaited in the night. As the moon rose high, casting silver light upon the hall, the silence was shattered by a terrible roar. Grendel had come. The beast's eyes glowed with malice, its claws sharp as the edge of winter's ice. Beowulf's grip tightened on his sword, yet he remembered his vow. The monster would be defeated by courage and might, not by retreat or fear. And so, in the shadowed Hall of Hero, the first clash between hero and monster began. a battle that would echo through the annals of history and mark the beginning of a legend that would endure for centuries. Chapter 2: The Fight with Grendel. The night was heavy with anticipation as Hero lay silent beneath the silver light of the moon. The hall's great timbers groaned under the weight of centuries, and shadows flickered across the walls as if alive. Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, sat among the warriors, yet his mind was focused, sharp as the edge of his sword. Though the hall was filled with men, only he possessed the courage to face the terror that lurked outside Grendel, the monstrous scourge whose strength had struck fear across the lands. The wind whispered through the hall's open doors, carrying a faint stench of decay, a harbinger of the nightmare to come. Beowulf rose, his eyes narrowing. He did not don armor or draw his sword. This battle, he knew, would be fought with raw strength, with the power of his own body, and with the courage of his spirit. He had pledged to face Grendel with no weapon, for the fiend's claws and savagery demanded a hero unencumbered by metal. A sudden silence fell, broken only by the distant sound of Grendel's approach. Then, with a deafening roar, the monster burst into the hall. Its eyes glowed like molten coals, its claws raked the timbers, and the stench of death preceded its every step. Beowulf's warriors froze, terror striking their hearts, but the hero did not falter. "I am Beowulf of the Geats," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. "I face you with courage, and I will not yield." Grendel lunged with inhuman speed, crushing benches and men alike. Beowulf met the attack, seizing the creature's massive arm in his iron grasp. The monster struggled, its strength monstrous, yet Beowulf's grip was unyielding. He twisted, countering the brute force with skill, and the hall shook with the battle of two titans. Fury and terror filled Grendel's eyes, but Beowulf remained calm, calculating each move, anticipating every strike. The monster clawed at him, snapping its jaws, yet the hero's body was like steel, his resolve unbreakable. The air was thick with dust and the cries of men, yet Beowulf's focus never wavered. With a mighty heave, he wrenched Grendel's arm from its socket. The fiend screamed, a sound that shook the walls and chilled every heart. Blood gushed across the floor as Grendel recoiled, limping toward the shadows from which it had emerged. Beowulf's eyes burned with triumph, yet he remained vigilant, knowing the fight was not yet over. Grendel retreated into the night, wounded but alive, leaving behind terror and the mangled remains of the hall's furnishings. The warriors, once paralyzed by fear, erupted in cheers, their voices mingling with the wind and the distant howl of the sea. Beowulf stood tall, victorious, yet humble. He had faced the nightmare and emerged unbroken, yet he knew the darkness would return. King Hrothgar approached, his hands trembling, eyes wide with awe and gratitude. "Beowulf, your strength is unmatched, and your courage beyond measure," he said. "You have saved Hero this night, and your name shall be sung in our halls forever." Beowulf bowed, acknowledging the praise, but mindful of the future. He knew Grendel's mother, a creature even more vengeful, would come seeking retribution. The battle was won, but the war had only begun. In the quiet that followed, the hall echoed with a new hope, the hope that a hero, guided by courage and honor, could face even the darkest horrors and prevail. As dawn broke over the land, casting gold upon the ruins of Hero, Beowulf looked toward the horizon. His journey had begun with a victory, but the shadows of vengeance and the trials yet to come reminded him that true heroism was a path strewn with both glory and peril. Chapter 3: the wrath of Grendel's mother. The victory over Grendel had brought a fragile peace to Hero, but the land trembled beneath a new threat. In the shadowed depths of a dark lake, Grendel's mother, a monstrous creature of vengeance and sorrow, stirred. Her rage was a tidal wave of fury, fueled by the death of her son at the hands of Beowulf. The waters churned with unnatural ferocity, and the mist that clung to the lake carried the scent of wet earth, decay, and something older than memory itself. Hrothgar, wise and burdened by years, summoned Beowulf to his side. His face, lined with worry, betrayed the fear that even a king could not conceal. "Beowulf, hero of the Geats," he said, voice heavy, "your courage has saved our hall. Yet I fear that Grendel's mother will come. She is cunning and relentless. I ask that you face her, for none other can meet her wrath and survive." Beowulf nodded solemnly. "Great king, I will descend into the waters and confront the beast. If the darkness must be faced, it shall be by my hand, guided by courage and honor." That night, armed with a sword and his unwavering resolve, Beowulf followed the trail of blood and claw marks to the edge of the Black Lake. The water shimmered with an eerie light, and the air was thick with the scent of iron and salt. As he approached, the surface of the lake rippled unnaturally, and a terrible presence rose from its depths. Grendel's mother, a creature of immense size, her eyes like molten gold, and her claws sharp enough to rend stone. Beowulf's heart remained steadfast. He leaped into the dark waters, the chill biting his flesh, yet the warrior pressed onward. The lake became a labyrinth of darkness and shadow, the currents twisting around him as though the very water itself sought to consume him. With each stroke, he felt the eyes of the monster upon him, and the roar of Grendel's mother echoed like thunder, shaking the submerged rocks. The battle was fierce. Beowulf's sword struck at her thick hide, sparks flying as steel met claw and scale. The creature's strength was formidable, each strike sending him backward, testing his skill and endurance. Yet Beowulf's resolve never wavered. He remembered the cries of Hero, the hope of the people, and the promise he had made to Hrothgar. With a mighty heave, he wrenched free a massive sword found within the lake, a relic of ancient power, and struck at the heart of the monster. Grendel's mother fell, her scream shattering the silence of the depths. The lake grew still, and a strange calm settled over the waters. Beowulf, exhausted and bloodied, emerged victorious, carrying the head of the monstrous creature as proof of his triumph. Upon returning to Hero, the Danes hailed him as a hero of legend. The hall rang with song and celebration, yet Beowulf's mind remained vigilant. He knew that the shadows of vengeance were never truly vanquished, and that the path of a hero was fraught with continual trial. King Hrothgar, with tears of relief, spoke words that would forever echo in the warrior's memory. "Beowulf, you have faced the darkness that none dared confront. Your courage is unmatched, and your name will live as long as men tell tales of valor. Yet remember, heroism is not without cost, and the fates watch all who dare challenge destiny." Beowulf nodded, understanding that this victory was but one chapter in a saga that would define not only his life, but the future of kingdoms. Hero would stand once more, its walls fortified not only by timber, but by the courage of a single hero who faced monsters and emerged triumphant. As dawn broke over the misty lake, Beowulf gazed toward the horizon, knowing that the greatest trials were yet to come. His journey was far from complete, and the legend of his deeds would grow only through courage, honor, and the battles that lay ahead. Chapter 4. Return to Geatland. The journey home was quiet, the sea calm, as if honoring the hero who sailed upon it. Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, stood at the bow of his ship, the wind tugging at his cloak and the sunlight glinting off his armor. The Danes had celebrated his triumph over Grendel and his mother, yet Beowulf's mind remained on the future. True heroism, he knew, was measured not by the cheers of men, but by the endurance of challenges yet to come. Upon reaching the land of the Geats, Beowulf was greeted as a hero. Villages lined the shores, their people shouting praises and waving banners. Children ran to the docks, inspired by tales of the warrior who had faced the monstrous Grendel and his mother, emerging victorious. Beowulf's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and humility. He had faced death and darkness, yet it was the hope of people and the bond of loyalty that gave his victories meaning. King Hygelac, Beowulf's uncle, welcomed him with open arms. The great hall of Geatland echoed with celebration, feasts laid out in honor of the returning hero. Yet, amid the jubilation, Beowulf sensed shadows stirring in his homeland. The land was peaceful, yet such calm often precedes turmoil. Tales from distant scouts hinted at raiders and rival clans gathering strength, eager to test the might of the Geats and the resolve of their champion. During the festivities, Beowulf recounted his battles to Hygelac and his warriors, speaking not only of victory, but of vigilance. The monsters I faced in Denmark were not mere beasts, but embodiments of darkness, he explained. The land of Geatland must remain vigilant. Our enemies may not be monsters of claw and fang, but men whose hearts have been poisoned by envy, ambition, or fear. As he spoke, the wisdom and valor that had carried him across the sea shone through. The people of Geatland saw not only a warrior, but a protector, a leader who embodied both strength and prudence. The songs sung that night would carry his deeds through generations, inspiring those who would follow in his path. Yet even amid celebration, Beowulf prepared for the trials ahead. Scouts were dispatched to monitor the northern borders, and alliances with neighboring clans were strengthened. The hero understood that peace is a fragile treasure, easily shattered by the ambitions of men or the stirrings of hidden darkness. One evening, as the hall quieted and the embers of the fire glowed, Beowulf reflected upon the journey that had brought him here. From the terror-filled halls of Hero to the depths of the dark lake, he had faced death and triumphed. Yet the weight of leadership pressed upon him as heavily as any sword. He realized that heroism demanded not only courage in battle, but wisdom in governance, foresight in counsel, and strength of character that could withstand both mortal envy and divine testing. "The battles I have fought are only the beginning," he murmured to himself. "If my people are to thrive, I must be vigilant, courageous, and true in war, in counsel, and in heart." As days passed, Beowulf continued to strengthen the Geatish lands. He trained warriors, reinforced defenses, and fostered unity among the clans. The land flourished under his guidance, yet he remained watchful, knowing that the peace of Geatland was not eternal. Shadows lingered at the edges of the forests, whispers of raiders and monsters stirring in hidden places. Beowulf's legacy began to take shape, not only through his deeds, but through the preparation he laid for future generations. His victories in Denmark were the first steps, but his role as protector, leader, and eventual king would demand wisdom, courage, and sacrifice of a magnitude yet unknown. As the sun set over the hills of Geatland, painting the sky in gold and crimson. Beowulf looked toward the horizon, sensing that his greatest challenges still lay ahead. The monster's threat had ended, but the trials of fate, time, and human ambition were only beginning. The hero's journey was far from over, and the legend of Beowulf would continue to unfold across the lands he loved and protected. Chapter 5: The Rise of the Dragon. Years passed in Geatland. The people flourished, fields yielded bountiful harvests, and warriors trained diligently under the hero's watchful eye. Yet, as is often the way of fate, peace is a fragile veil, easily disturbed by the stirrings of hidden darkness. Far in the north, deep within a desolate mountain, a slumbering power began to awaken. A dragon, ancient and cunning, stirred in its fiery lair. The creature had slept for centuries, nourished by treasure hoarded from forgotten civilizations, and its wrath had been kindled by a single slight. A thief, daring and foolish, had stolen a gem from the dragon's hoard. Though the thief escaped with life, the dragon's fury could not be contained. Flames of vengeance licked the walls of its cavern, and smoke spiraled toward the heavens as a storm of wrath gathered in its heart. Word of this terrible beast soon reached Beowulf. Scouts reported villages burned, livestock consumed, and travelers vanished along the northern roads. The people were gripped by fear, recalling tales of monsters from old legends. Beowulf listened carefully, his mind sharpening like a sword at the forge. He understood that the dragon was no ordinary foe. It was a force of nature, a terror that demanded both courage and strategy to overcome. "I have faced Grendel and his mother," Beowulf declared to his warriors. "I have sailed across seas and battled monsters born of darkness. Yet this dragon tests not only strength, but the courage of every man in Geatland. We shall face it together, and we shall prevail." Preparations began at once. The bravest warriors were summoned, and weapons forged for a battle that would test the limits of mortal endurance. Beowulf himself inspected the northern forests and hills, marking possible ambush points and studying the patterns of the dragon's attacks. His legendary foresight, honed through years of trial and combat, allowed him to anticipate the creature's movements and the devastation it could cause. As the dragon's fire raged across the northern lands, Beowulf gathered a select band of loyal warriors, men whose courage equaled their loyalty. Torches flickered in the darkness as they marched toward the dragon's lair, the air thick with smoke and the scent of burning timber. Each step was deliberate, every breath measured, as the hero knew that a single miscalculation could spell disaster. The dragon emerged at last, scales glinting like molten metal in the flickering torchlight, eyes blazing with fury and intelligence. Its wings stretched wide, casting shadows across the rugged terrain, and its roar echoed through the mountains like thunder. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath its immense weight. Beowulf advanced without hesitation, sword in hand. He understood that this confrontation required not only physical might, but the wisdom and courage that years of experience had bestowed upon him. Each movement, each strategy, was calculated to counter the dragon's fiery breath and devastating strength. The battle raged through the mountains, a clash of titans under a sky streaked with fire and smoke. Beowulf's warriors fought valiantly, yet many were wounded, and some fell to the dragon's fury. The hero pressed forward, his blade striking at the creature's underbelly, seeking the one vulnerable point amid the scales of steel. Flames and smoke filled the air, yet Beowulf's focus remained unbroken, his spirit indomitable. Though the dragon was formidable, It underestimated the hero's courage and the bond between Beowulf and his loyal warriors. Using a combination of strategy, strength, and sheer determination, Beowulf inflicted a grievous wound upon the dragon. The creature, enraged and weakened, retreated into the cavern, leaving a trail of fire and destruction behind. The northern lands were saved, for now, yet the victory came at a price. Villages were scorched, and brave warriors were lost. Beowulf, though triumphant, understood that the dragon's threat was not fully extinguished. Its fury, its cunning, and its desire for vengeance would endure, a shadow looming over the hero's later years. As the sun rose over the burned northern forests, Beowulf gazed upon the horizon, knowing that the legend of his deeds would grow, but so too would the trials that awaited him. The rise of the dragon marked a new chapter in his saga, one of fire, valor, and the inevitability of mortality that even heroes must face. Chapter 6. The Heroes' Council. The northern lands lay scarred from the dragon's fury. The forests blackened, and villages reduced to smoldering ash. Yet Geatland's heart beat strong under Beowulf's vigilance. Returning to the great hall, he found King Hygelac seated upon his throne, his brow furrowed with worry. The hero's presence brought relief, yet the weight of counsel and strategy was heavier than any sword. "Beowulf," the king said, voice grave, "the dragon's fire has reached even our borders. Its wrath grows, and our people tremble. You have seen its power. Tell us how we might endure." Beowulf knelt before the king, his expression solemn yet determined. "My lord, the dragon is not merely a beast. It is a force born of greed, rage, and ancient malice. To face it, we must be united, vigilant, and wise. Our warriors must train not only in strength, but in strategy. For a head-on confrontation, without preparation, would be our undoing," he continued, outlining a plan of action. Watchtowers would be erected along the northern hills, signals prepared to warn of the dragon's approach, and the strongest warriors assembled to protect the villages. The smiths were instructed to forge weapons capable of withstanding the creature's fiery breath, while scouts gathered intelligence about its lair, movements, and vulnerabilities. Beowulf's wisdom extended beyond the battlefield. He advised the king to cultivate alliances with neighboring clans, emphasizing unity over rivalry. He spoke of the necessity of morale, encouraging feasts, songs, and tales of heroism to strengthen the courage of the people. Fear, he explained, could weaken the stoutest hearts if left unchecked. Yet, amid counsel and planning, Beowulf also reflected upon the nature of heroism. His victories over Grendel, Grendel's mother, and other threats had made him renowned, but he knew that fame could breed both reverence and envy. Some warriors might resent his prominence, and some allies might falter under the shadow of fear. The hero understood that his role was not only to fight monsters, but to guide men to lead with both valor and wisdom. Days turned into weeks as preparations continued. Beowulf trained tirelessly alongside his warriors, testing their skills and forging their resolve. The people of Geatland, inspired by his courage, labored to fortify their villages, build defenses, and gather provisions. Even as the dragon's threat loomed, hope endured, strengthened by the presence of a hero whose deeds had become legend. One evening, as the northern winds howled and the horizon burned with the last light of sunset, Beowulf convened a council of the bravest men. Maps were spread across the table, routes and strategies discussed, and every warrior's strength assessed. "The dragon is cunning," Beowulf warned, "and it will test not only our strength, but our resolve. Remember this: courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Stand together, protect one another, and let none falter. For the fate of Geatland rests upon our unity and valor." The council concluded with solemn nods, the weight of responsibility shared among those who would stand at the front lines. Beowulf retired that night to the great hall, gazing at the northern horizon where the dragon's lair awaited. He knew that eventually the creature would rise again, demanding a confrontation that would define the twilight of his life. As the stars shimmered above, Beowulf reflected on the passage of time. He was no longer the young warrior who had sailed to Denmark to face Grendel. He was now a seasoned hero, a leader, and a protector. The dragon was the ultimate test, one that would require not only strength, but the full measure of courage, wisdom, and sacrifice. In the quiet of the night, Beowulf's resolve hardened. The counsel he had given, the defenses he had planned, and the warriors he had trained would all be called upon when the dragon next rose from its lair. He knew that the coming battle would be fierce, perhaps final, but he was prepared to meet destiny with honor and unyielding valor. The northern wind carried a faint, fiery scent, a reminder that the shadow of the dragon lingered. Beowulf rose from his contemplation, gripping the hilt of his sword, and whispered a vow: "I will face the fire, the fury, and the shadow. I will protect my people and honor the legacy of heroes who came before me. If death comes, it will find me standing, unbroken, a hero to the last breath." Chapter 7. The Dragon Awakens. The years of vigilance had brought Geatland relative peace, yet deep within a desolate mountain, the dragon stirred. Its lair, hidden for centuries, now echoed with an ancient fury. The theft of a single treasure from its hoard had been enough to awaken a wrath that no mortal could tame. Smoke coiled from the mountain peak, carrying with it the acrid stench of brimstone, and the earth trembled beneath the creature's growing rage. Scouts first noticed the signs: livestock found charred in pastures, forests blackened by fire, and the distant roar of a beast that rivaled thunder. Fear spread like wildfire through the villages, and tales of the dragon's awakening reached Beowulf in the great hall. The hero, seasoned by battles with Grendel and his mother, did not hesitate. He understood that this was the culmination of a lifetime of challenges, a trial that would test not only his strength, but the wisdom and courage that had carried him through decades of heroism. Beowulf convened the bravest warriors and wise men of Geatland. Maps were spread, strategies debated, and every man's skill assessed. The dragon's fire was unmatched, its cunning formidable, and its hunger insatiable. Beowulf spoke with solemn authority, instilling both courage and vigilance. "The dragon rises not merely as a creature of fire," he declared. "It is a test of our unity, our resolve, and our courage. Every village, every warrior, and every heart in Geatland must stand together. The hour of reckoning has come, and we must meet it with strength and honor." Preparations were swift and meticulous. Watchtowers were erected along the mountain passes, and warriors trained day and night. Blacksmiths forged weapons, reinforced with iron and tempered with ancient knowledge, capable of withstanding the dragon's searing breath. Every precaution was taken, yet Beowulf knew that even the finest defenses could falter before such a formidable foe. On the eve of battle, Beowulf climbed the mountain with a select band of warriors. The night was thick with smoke and the scent of sulfur, the air heavy with the promise of destruction. From the darkness of the cavern, The dragon's eyes gleamed like molten gold, and its roar shattered the silence, echoing across valleys and hills. Flames danced along the walls, illuminating the massive, coiled body of the beast. The confrontation began. The dragon lunged with terrifying speed, its jaws snapping and claws tearing at rock and earth alike. Beowulf met the attack with courage, his sword striking the beast's scales, sparks flying as steel collided with fire-hardened hide. His warriors fought valiantly, yet many were wounded, and the creature's fury seemed limitless. Despite the terror and chaos, Beowulf pressed onward. He sought the weak spot, glimpsed in years of study and careful observation. With a combination of strength, strategy, and relentless courage, he struck true, inflicting a grievous wound upon the dragon. The beast's roar split the night sky, a mixture of rage and pain, and its wings thrashed violently, sending rock and debris tumbling down the mountainside. The battle raged until dawn, the sky painted in hues of fire and ash. Beowulf's warriors, inspired by his fearlessness, pressed the attack, driving the dragon back. Yet the hero knew that this confrontation was only part of the ordeal. The dragon's wrath was a force of destiny, a test that demanded sacrifice, courage, and unyielding resolve. As the first light of morning touched the peak, Beowulf stood victorious, yet weary. The dragon lay wounded, its fury subdued, but not entirely vanquished. Geatland had survived the night, but the battle had reminded all who witnessed it that heroism is not without peril, and that even the strongest warrior must confront mortality, fear, and the inexorable march of time. Beowulf gazed across the valleys below, the weight of leadership pressing upon him. The dragon had awakened not only as a beast of fire, but as a symbol of the trials every hero must endure. Strength alone would not suffice. Courage, wisdom, and the loyalty of men were equally vital. With a solemn nod, knowing that the dragon's shadow would loom over Geatland until the final confrontation, a battle that would define the twilight of his life and the legacy of a hero whose deeds would echo through the ages. Chapter 8. The Dragon's Fury. Though dawn had broken over the northern mountains, the shadow of the dragon still loomed over Geatland. Its wound, though severe, did not quell its wrath. The ancient creature, driven by vengeance and the hunger for destruction, stirred once more within its lair. Smoke and fire coiled upward into the sky, a warning to all who dared dwell in its domain. Villages shivered beneath the mountain's shadow, and the air was thick with fear. Beowulf, seasoned by decades of heroism, did not falter. He understood that this confrontation would test more than mere strength. It would demand courage, strategy, and endurance. Calling his loyal warriors to council, he spoke with a voice that carried the weight of authority and experience. "The dragon's fury is unlike any we have faced," he declared. "It is patient, cunning, and relentless. Tonight, it will strike not only at the brave, but at the innocent. We must stand together, for unity is our greatest weapon against fire and shadow." Preparations were made with meticulous care. Villagers were guided to safer ground, stockpiles of food and water secured, and defensive barriers erected along the approaches to the northern hills. Beowulf trained tirelessly with his warriors, reinforcing their courage, testing their resolve, and ensuring that every man understood his role. As night fell, a suffocating darkness enveloped the mountains. The dragon emerged, scales glinting with an eerie light, eyes burning like molten gold, and wings stretching wide to blot out the stars. Its roar shattered the quiet of the land, a sound that resonated with fury and the weight of centuries. Flames erupted from its maw, consuming forests, crumbling stone, and sending rivers of molten rock down the slopes. Beowulf met the assault with fearless determination. His sword struck again and again, clashing against scales impervious to ordinary steel. Sparks flew, and the very earth trembled beneath the force of the battle. Yet the dragon's attacks were relentless. Each swing of its tail, each eruption of fire, tested the limits of human endurance. Warriors fell around him, some consumed by flames, others struck down by the beast's massive claws. Amid the chaos, Beowulf's courage shone brightest. He anticipated the dragon's movements, exploiting weaknesses in its attack and striking with precise, calculated blows. He knew that the battle would not be won by strength alone, but by a combination of skill, courage, and the unwavering determination of those who fought alongside him. Hours passed, and the battle raged like a storm upon the mountains. The dragon's fury seemed endless, a force of nature that could not be reasoned with or tamed. Yet Beowulf's resolve remained unbroken. With a final, desperate strike, he pierced the dragon's underbelly, wounding it grievously. The creature's roar of rage and pain shook the mountainside, echoing across valleys and forests. The dragon's fury waned, yet the cost of the battle was heavy. Many brave warriors lay fallen, and the northern lands bore the scars of fire and destruction. Beowulf, bloodied and weary, knew that the confrontation was not yet fully resolved. The dragon's threat lingered, a shadow that would demand a final reckoning. As the first light of dawn glimmered through smoke and ash, Beowulf gathered the surviving warriors. Together, they prepared for the ultimate confrontation, aware that the coming hours could define the hero's fate and the destiny of Geatland itself. The dragon's fury had tested every measure of courage, yet the hero's heart remained steadfast. Beowulf gazed upon the mountains, his mind unyielding. The final battle was near, and he knew that heroism demanded sacrifice, wisdom, and an unbreakable spirit. The dragon's fury had been met with courage, but the end was yet to come, a test that would determine not only the hero's legacy, but the future of all he had sworn to protect. Chapter 9: The Hero's Final Stand. The mountain's peak was engulfed in smoke and fire, the ground scorched by the dragon's relentless wrath. Beowulf, bloodied and worn by years of battle and leadership, prepared for what he knew would be his ultimate confrontation. Every scar, every wound, every lesson of a lifetime had led him to this moment. The hero's heart was steadfast. Courage, wisdom, and honor were his shield as much as any forged weapon. The dragon, massive beyond measure, emerged from its lair with a roar that shook the very heavens. Flames licked the sky, casting shadows that danced like phantoms across the jagged rock. Its eyes burned with ancient malice, reflecting a hatred born of centuries, and its wings spread wide, blotting out the stars as if the world itself would succumb to darkness. Beowulf's warriors, the bravest of Geatland, stood beside him. Though their numbers were diminished from previous skirmishes, each man's resolve was tempered by fear, respect, and the knowledge that the battle ahead was as much a test of spirit as of strength. "Stand firm, my brothers," Beowulf shouted, his voice cutting through the roar of fire and wind. "Tonight, we face destiny itself. Fight with honor, protect one another, and let no shadow break your courage. We are the shield of Geatland." The dragon struck first, its massive jaws snapping, claws tearing, and fire erupting in a torrent of destruction. Beowulf met the attack with unmatched valor. His sword, tempered with the strength of many battles, clashed against the dragon's impenetrable scales. Sparks flew, and the air was filled with the roar of beast and man, the cries of warriors, and the thunderous impact of steel against flesh. The battle raged across the mountain. Beowulf's strength, though legendary, was tested to its absolute limit. He dodged flames that would have immolated lesser men, and struck blows that chipped the dragon's mighty scales. Yet he knew that brute force alone could not defeat a creature of such ancient power. Strategy, courage, and unyielding resolve were the weapons that would carry him through. Amid the chaos, Beowulf's mind was clear. He remembered every lesson, every battle, every challenge faced across the years. The dragon's movements were calculated, its fury intelligent and relentless. Beowulf anticipated its strikes, countered with precision, and directed his warriors with calm authority. Hours passed as the night burned with fire and struggle. The dragon's strength waned, but it retaliated with renewed fury, sensing its impending defeat. Beowulf seized the opportunity, climbing atop a rocky outcropping and delivering a final, decisive strike to the vulnerable underbelly. The dragon let out a scream that echoed through the mountains, a sound of rage, pain, and the end of an era. The creature collapsed, its body trembling as the fire within it dimmed. Beowulf, though victorious, staggered under the weight of exhaustion and the injuries sustained in the epic confrontation. His warriors gathered around him, their faces marked by awe, grief, and relief. The dragon lay defeated, its hoard revealed, treasures glittering in the firelight. Yet the cost of victory was evident in the toll it had taken on hero and men alike. Beowulf knew that his strength had limits, and that even the greatest hero must face mortality. He gazed at the dragon's fallen form, the mountain silent but for the whispers of wind, and understood that legends are not born from triumph alone, but from courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to face destiny without fear. As dawn broke, casting gold and crimson across the mountain, Beowulf, the hero of Geatland, stood victorious but weary. The dragon's shadow had been vanquished, but the echoes of the battle, the memories of fallen warriors, and the weight of years pressed upon him. He had faced the ultimate challenge, proving that heroism is not measured by immortality, but by the courage to stand, fight, and endure, even when the end is inevitable. Chapter 11. The final day's time, relentless and unforgiving, began to weigh upon Beowulf. Years of battles, leadership, and vigilance had forged him into a hero unlike any other. Yet even the mightiest of warriors must face the twilight of life. The once youthful hero now bore the marks of age. Silver streaked his hair, his strength, though undiminished in spirit, was tempered by the wisdom and weariness of years. Geatland flourished under his guidance. Villages rebuilt, trade routes secured, and alliances strengthened. The people revered him not merely as a warrior, but as a guardian of their land and their values. Yet Beowulf felt the heavy responsibility of mortality pressing upon him. Every day reminded him that the time would come when he could no longer wield his sword, when he would have to leave the defense of Geatland to those who followed. He convened councils, advising the younger leaders with patience and clarity. The lessons he imparted were drawn from a lifetime of triumphs and tragedies. He spoke of courage tempered with prudence, the necessity of vigilance, and the importance of unity among clans. Beowulf understood that the legacy of a hero is not written in tales alone, but in the preparation of those who continue the fight after the hero is gone. Remember this, Beowulf told the council one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with fire and gold. A kingdom stands not by the sword of one, but by the courage and honor of all who defend it. Lead wisely, protect the weak, and let your deeds inspire the hearts of generations to come. Despite the peace he had fostered, omens of future trials whispered across the land. Fires in distant villages, reports of raiders gathering strength, and subtle signs in the forests reminded Beowulf that Geatland's safety was never absolute. He trained his warriors rigorously, ensuring that each was prepared for the challenges that lay ahead, while never neglecting the moral and spiritual guidance he provided. In quiet moments, Beowulf reflected upon his own life. He thought of Grendel, the terror that had first tested him, and of the countless monsters and men he had faced since. He remembered the battles with Grendel's mother, the voyages to foreign lands, and the fiery confrontation with the dragon. Each trial had shaped him, each victory had left its mark, and each loss had reminded him of the fragile nature of existence. As days turned to weeks, Beowulf felt the approaching weight of destiny. His body, though still formidable, hinted at the limits that age imposes even upon heroes. Yet his spirit remained undimmed, a beacon of courage and resolve. He walked among his people, offering counsel, encouragement, and reassurance, knowing that his presence alone fortified the hearts of Geatland. Beowulf also contemplated the true meaning of heroism. It was not glory alone that defined a hero, but the willingness to face danger, protect the weak, and inspire others to act with honor and courage. He understood that mortality was inevitable, but the influence of a hero's deeds could transcend life itself, carried forward in the hearts and actions of those who witnessed or heard of them. As the final days approached, Beowulf ensured that Geatland would be safeguarded after his passing. Alliances were renewed, defenses strengthened, and the younger generation of warriors trained to embody the virtues he cherished most. He knew that his life's work would continue beyond his presence, that his legacy would endure as long as courage, honor, and unity guided the people of Geatland. In the quiet of twilight, Beowulf gazed toward the horizon, the golden light illuminating the hills and forests he had sworn to protect. He felt the weight of a lifetime of heroism, the burden of countless battles, and the satisfaction of a life spent in service to his people. He understood that the end of his days was near, yet he faced it with the same courage that had defined every step of his journey. Chapter 12. The hero's passing and the eternal legend. The winds of Geatland whispered through the hills, carrying with them the echoes of songs sung in the great hall, songs that told of Beowulf's victories, his courage, and his wisdom. Yet, amid the music and laughter, a quiet shadow lingered. The king, though still upright and commanding, had grown pale and weary. Each dawn seemed to drain a little more of his strength. Each sunset lingered longer in his gaze. The people felt it, the silent truth that their protector was nearing the end of his mortal days. Beowulf stood upon the cliffs that overlooked the restless sea, the same waters that had carried him to distant shores and deadly battles. The salt wind stung his face, and in its cold embrace he felt the presence of fate itself, a force that even the mightiest hero cannot defy. His armor, though polished and strong, now hung heavier on his shoulders, yet his eyes still burned with the same light that had once terrified monsters and inspired men. He had lived long enough to see peace reign across Geatland. Children played freely in the meadows. Fires burned in safety at night. Songs replaced screams in the darkness. But Beowulf knew that the balance between peace and chaos was delicate, and his death would test the strength of his people. He summoned Wiglaf, his most loyal warrior, and together they walked in silence through the fading light. "Wiglaf," Beowulf said softly, his voice like the rustle of old oak leaves. "I have fought many battles and have known glory beyond measure, yet none of it is truly mine to keep. All that I have done, every scar, every victory, belongs to our people. When I am gone, you must guard them, not just with the sword, but with wisdom and compassion." Wiglaf bowed deeply. "My king, your spirit will never leave us. Your name will stand as long as men draw breath." Beowulf smiled faintly. "Then let it be so. But remember, a name is nothing if those who bear it forget its meaning. Lead them with courage, as I once did, not for glory, but for honor." That night, the fires in Hero burned brighter than ever. The people gathered to feast one last time with their king. They brought forth mead and roasted boar, their songs filling the hall until dawn. Beowulf, seated at the head of the long table, listened in silence. The songs that once celebrated his victories now sounded like farewells. Yet there was peace in his heart, not the peace of conquest, but of completion. When morning came, Beowulf rose before the sun. He donned his armor one final time, each plate glinting faintly in the pale dawn. Wiglaf stood beside him, silent and steadfast. Together they walked once more to the dragon's mound, where the ruins of the beast still lay, a reminder of the final battle that had sealed the hero's fate. There, upon the stones blackened by dragonfire, Beowulf sank to one knee. His breath grew shallow, and the world around him began to blur into light and memory. He saw flashes of his youth, the first time he set sail for Denmark, the night he faced Grendel in the mead hall. The fierce eyes of Grendel's mother in the dark waters, the golden fire of the dragon. Each memory blazed before him like stars fading into dawn. Wiglaf knelt beside him, his voice trembling. "My king, the people will need you still. Stay with us." Beowulf placed a trembling hand upon his warrior's arm. "No, Wiglaf, my time has come. But do not mourn me. I go where no darkness reaches. Guard the Geats, and let my deeds be the light that guides them." His eyes turned toward the sea one final time. The waves shimmered gold beneath the rising sun. With a final breath, he whispered words that would echo through eternity. "Fate has granted me this life, and now it reclaims me. I go to the Hall of Heroes, where no shadow falls, and songs never end." And with that, Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, the mightiest of all Geats, drew his last breath. They laid him upon a great pyre built high upon the cliffs, overlooking the sea he had once conquered. Warriors gathered from all corners of the land, their armor gleaming like silver beneath the sun. As the flames rose, they sang not songs of mourning, but of triumph, of a life lived with courage and honor. The smoke curled upward into the heavens, carrying with it the spirit of their fallen king. When the fire had burned to ash, the people of Geatland built a towering barrow at the edge of the sea. Within it, they placed treasures, gold, armor, and the sword that had slain the dragon, all to honor the hero who had saved them. The mound stood as a beacon for sailors, who, even from far away, could see the monument and whisper, "There lies Beowulf, the mightiest of kings, who protected his people and feared no death." Generations passed, yet his legend endured. Bards sang of Beowulf's strength, of his courage against the dragon, of his unyielding spirit. Children grew up hearing his name as a symbol of heroism, and warriors drew strength from his memory before battle. The barrow by the sea became a sacred place, where waves whispered his story to all who listened. And thus, Beowulf's tale was not one of death, but of immortality. For though his body turned to dust, his name and the ideals he embodied lived on forever, carried by the hearts of those who believed that courage, honor, and sacrifice were the truest forms of greatness.